Timex just took one of their most iconic vintage watches and gave it a seriously good summer makeover. This is the new Timex and Todd Snyder Marlin. And honestly, it might be one of the best looking Marlins they've made. It keeps that classic 1960s Marlin design but comes in three very different colors: silver, icy blue, and salmon pink. The silver is definitely closest to the original Marlin, but personally, I think the icy blue and the salmon versions are where this watch really shines. And the first thing you'll notice when you pick it up is the size. This is a 34mm watch, and yes, by modern standards, that sounds tiny. But that's kind of the whole point. The original Marlin was a small vintage dress watch, and Timex has kept those proportions instead of turning it into another oversized modern watch. You get a 34mm case, around 41mm lug to lug, and 10.7mm thickness. On paper, those dimensions might make the watch sound small and unassuming, but once you actually put it on your wrist, you realize how much personality a smaller watch can have. And thanks to the mesh bracelet, it actually has a little more presence than the 34mm case size would suggest. If you have a smaller wrist, this is going to be incredibly easy to wear. And if you have a larger wrist, I think you can pull it off if you're into vintage proportions. You just have to be comfortable wearing a smaller watch. On the wrist, it's incredibly light and understated. It's not the kind of a watch that's constantly asking for attention, but once you look at it, there is a lot of little details to appreciate. The polished stainless steel case gives it a very dressy appearance, but it never feels overly formal, and that's where the dial really comes in. The icy blue dial has a really soft, almost pastel tone to it, and under direct light, you can see a subtle sunburst effect. The way the light moves across the dial gives it a little bit of depth, and it can look noticeably different depending on the angle. It's eye-catching, but it doesn't feel loud. The hour markers are also really nicely done. You get a combination of polished applied baton markers with Roman numerals at 12, 3, 6, and 9 o'clock, which gives it a proper mid-century dress watch character without making the dial feel busy. There's also a subtle minute track around the outside, and I think the proportions of everything are pretty much spot on. Nothing feels oversized and nothing is fighting for your attention. The branding is surprisingly restrained as well. You have the Timex Marlin logo just below the 12 o'clock, with a Todd Snyder logo above 6 o'clock and a small Todd Snyder text logo below it. And what I really like is how subtle the logos are. Depending on the lighting and the angle, some of the branding almost disappears into the dial. It doesn't constantly remind you that you're wearing a collaboration. The hands are kept simple but polished, which reflect the light beautifully and give it a lot of character. There is no date window, no unnecessary complication, and no attempt to fill every bit of the empty space. It's just clean 3-hand dial. Now let's talk about that mesh bracelet. The finely woven stainless steel mesh gives the Marlin a completely different personality compared to the usual leather strap versions. It makes the watch feel much more casual and summery. You can wear it with shirt and trousers, but you could just as easily throw it on a t-shirt and jeans, and it wouldn't look out of place. The bracelet is lightweight and really comfortable and doesn't pull any wrist hair. Talking about the crystal, you get an acrylic crystal, which is actually pretty appropriate for a watch like this. Acrylic was common on vintage watches, and that high domed shape is a big part of Marlin's retro character. It also gives you that beautiful distortion around the edges when you look at the dial from an angle. But at this price, I really wished Timex had gone with at least mineral crystal. I understand why sapphire isn't used here. Getting a high dome like this on sapphire is much more difficult and expensive. But mineral would have been a nice middle ground. Acrylic is great for vintage feel, but it is also more prone to scratches. And with a crystal this domed, I think it's gonna scratch very easily. Speaking of scratches, while filming, I noticed that the crystal already has a scratch on it. So yeah, this is going to be a scratch magnet. Thankfully, acrylic scratches can be polished out, so it's not the end of the world. You also get a 30 meters of water resistance and no loom, which I think is perfectly fine for a dress watch. But probably the most disappointing part of the watch for me is the movement. It's quartz. And if you're buying a Marlin specifically because you want a mechanical watch, then this probably isn't the one for you. Honestly, I really wished Timex had used the same hand-wound mechanical movement from their Marlin reissues. I've been trying to get the 1960s Marlin reissue for a while now, but it's almost never in stock. So when this collaboration launched, I was genuinely excited, and then I found out it was quartz. I was a little disappointed. Don't get me wrong, there's nothing wrong with the quartz. It's accurate, reliable, and incredibly convenient. But for a watch like the Marlin, I think a hand-wound mechanical movement would have made this so much more special. But the more I wear it, the more I realize that this watch isn't really trying to impress you mechanically. Not every watch needs to win you over with what's inside the case. Sometimes it's the proportions, the dial, the colors, the finishing, and just the way the whole thing comes together. And I think that's something we sometimes forget when we get too caught up in movements and specifications. A watch doesn't always have to impress you. Sometimes it just has to make you want to wear it. And that's what this Marlin does for me. That said, I do think that the price could have been a little more aggressive. I understand that you're paying for the Todd Snyder collaboration, the design, and the overall packaging. But personally, I think somewhere between 11,000 rupees and 13,000 rupees would have been a much sweeter price for this watch. So would I recommend buying it? I think it really comes down to what you're looking for. If what you're looking for is a classic Marlin experience, a vintage size case, the old school dress watch feel, and especially a mechanical movement, I'd honestly skip this one and go for the regular mechanical Marlins instead. But if you already like the Marlin design and want something a little more relaxed and contemporary, this version does have something going for it. The mesh bracelet, the icy blue and salmon dials, and the overall styling makes it feel less like a traditional dress watch and more like a summer everyday watch. It's still unmistakably a Marlin, but with a different personality. And that's exactly why I will be keeping mine. I still want that 1960s hand-wound Marlin reissue, and I'll probably keep looking for it. But until then, I really enjoy wearing this one. The dial, the proportions, the mesh bracelet, it all just works for me. So that was my review of the Todd Snyder and Timex Marlin collab. If you enjoyed this video, do leave a like. If you're new, consider subscribing. And I will see you guys in my next video.